Echoes in the Gilded Cage. In the city of Lumina, where the truth was a fragile currency traded in hushed tones, justice was not announced with blaring sirens. It arrived on the soft click of stilettos, a silent promise under a bruised sky. The city's courthouse, an ornate relic known as the Gilded Cage, loomed in the morning mist, a monument to forgotten promises. Its grand steps, usually a chaotic symphony of hurried lawyers and anxious defendants, were hushed, almost reverent. That was the kind of stillness that preceded something seismic. Then she appeared. Illyra Vance. Her name was already a whisper of legend among the city's legal elite. A woman who dismantled corruption not with a hammer, but with a scalpel. She wore a tailored suit the color of a winter sky, a suit that whispered wealth without screaming it. She moved with the grace of a predator who knew every corner of the jungle and had redrawn the map herself. In her hand, a worn leather briefcase. No entourage, no fanfare, just a woman forged in fire. But power rarely passes unchallenged. At the courthouse entrance, Sergeant Marcus Thorne stood like a rusted gargoyle, a man in his late 50s whose muscles had dissolved into a weary gristle. His badge, however, gleamed brighter than his conscience. Years of unchecked authority clung to him like a cheap cologne. He straightened as he saw Illyra, a sneer already etched on his face. "Stay in line, ma'am," he growled, his voice a gravelly bark that made the nearby guards look up, then quickly away. Illyra paused. Her voice, when it came, was like cold honey, a lethal blend of sweetness and steel. "Is there a problem?" No visible ID. Courthouse policy. Without a word, she slipped her hand into her jacket and withdrew a federal identification card. She held it out, her gaze unreadable, with just 2 fingers. Thorne snatched it, not bothering to look, and, in a gesture so casual it was theatrical, stuffed it into his pocket. "I'd like that returned," she said, her tone as level as a polished table. He smiled a slow, predatory smirk. "In a hurry, sweetheart?" The word hung in the air, a verbal slap. Behind him, a young female officer, fresh from training, winced, caught between the rigid lines of hierarchy and a prickled conscience. Illyra didn't rise to the bait. "My hearing is in courtroom 7. Then you'll follow my protocol. Random search." The words fell like a trap, a rusty key in a locked door. She could have argued, but instead, she studied him, her eyes narrowing imperceptibly. "I see." She followed him, not because she had to, but because she wanted a closer look at the rot. They walked down a dim corridor with flickering lights and peeling paint. At the end, a narrow door creaked open into a stifling room. A single metal chair, a table, and the stale stench of silence. "No cameras," she observed. "No distractions," he replied. "This isn't legal," she stated. He didn't answer, just pointed to the chair. When she didn't move, his hand shot out, his rough fingers yanking her hair back with a sudden, shocking violence. Her head snapped back, but her expression remained unbroken. "You just made a mistake," she said softly, her eyes now burning with a cold fire. Thorne leaned in, his lips curled in a sneer. "You people always think you're untouchable." Illyra met his gaze without blinking. "And men like you always think no one's watching." He laughed and tossed her ID onto the table. "You're free to go. Courtroom 7 is that way." Illyra adjusted her hair, retrieved her card, and walked out slowly, deliberately. If Thorne had even a flicker of instinct left, he would have felt the shift in the air. He had not humiliated her. He had awakened her. And Illyra Vance, once awakened, did not retreat. She transformed. In courtroom 7, a low murmur of anticipation filled the air. The prosecutor whispered to his assistant. The defense lawyer tapped his notes nervously. A judge had yet to arrive, but everyone felt the weight of something coming. Then the sound arrived, not loud but unmistakable. The rhythmic, deliberate click of heels down the corridor. Each step was a countdown like the ticking of a fuse. The rookie officer near the bench stiffened. She knew that walk now. The doors creaked open. The prosecutor's pen clattered to the floor. The public defender blinked twice. Even the defendant, an old man with tear-streaked cheeks, sat up straighter. The woman who entered wasn't just a judge. She was justice incarnate. But something was different. Her posture was the same, but there was a new chill, a stillness that spoke of impending storms. Illyria moved to the bench without acknowledging a soul. Her eyes scanned the courtroom, sharp and calculating. She reached into her briefcase, not for papers, but for a small, gleaming recorder. She placed it next to her gavel, her expression unreadable. "Court is now in session," she announced, her voice slicing through the room. The court clerk, looking bewildered, stood up. "Your Honor, this isn't your case. Judge Halstead is presiding today." "Judge Halstead won't be presiding," she said simply. "Call Sergeant Marcus Thorne to stand." The courtroom froze. Whispers rose like smoke before vanishing under the weight of confusion and shock. From a side door, Thorne entered. His usual swagger was gone, replaced with flickering unease. He looked like a man walking toward a precipice he couldn't see but already feared. "State your full name and your position," Illyria commanded, her tone cool and detached. "Marcus Thorne, court officer. 14 years. Illyria leaned forward, her fingers steepled. "How many times in your career have you conducted a random search on a federal judge?" Thorne hesitated. "None, except today." "And under what grounds did you do so?" He fumbled for words, but Illyria didn't wait. "You didn't follow protocol. You didn't check credentials. You abused your position." Too silent. Swift court officers moved from the back, stepping beside Thorne. Before he could react, the cold click of handcuffs echoed across the room. Gasps rippled through the audience. "This is not about one incident," Illyria continued, her voice sharpened by purpose. She opened her briefcase and withdrew a thick file. "This contains 27 written complaints from women of color, interns, administrative assistants, maintenance workers, all subjected to humiliation, verbal abuse, and physical intimidation, all silenced." She flipped to an internal memo. "Thorne is aggressive but efficient. Do not escalate unless media becomes involved." That was the system's answer. "But I am the media now." She handed a new document to the clerk. "This is the Vance Directive. Starting today, all officers and court personnel in this district will undergo quarterly audits and mandatory unconscious bias training. Any future acts of discrimination will result in immediate suspension and federal review." A hush fell over the room, not from fear, but from a dawning realization. Illyria rose from the bench, standing tall. "I don't raise my voice. I don't throw punches. I walk in rooms where I was never invited, and I make my mind, because justice doesn't need to shout. It only needs to be heard." Outside the gilded cage, a quiet crowd had gathered. No cheers, no noise, just people watching, waiting. When Illyria stepped out onto the stone steps, this time in full judicial robes, the crowd didn't cheer. They stood. They understood. Justice had finally arrived, and this time it was wearing a judge's robe.